I travel all over the country, visit lots of schools, meet with lots of people, and do my best to listen and learn from people about what's working in the field. And one of the things we've observed time and again is it's challenging to change an existing school. It's difficult to change a district. The bigger the entity, the harder it is to change, but people are doing it. And people are doing it not here and there, but they're doing it all over the country.
We have to just have a complete paradigm shift, an innovative approach to education. You just can't keep doing what you've been doing and expect a different result.
Let me get some kids at the table and ask them what they want. Let me bring some parents. Let me get some teachers. Let me get some division leaders, all at the table so we can start having the conversation together versus I'm going to sit in isolation and make determinations and decisions about what happens next, because the kids are ready.
One of my life highlights has been traveling all across the country and learning so much from remarkable educators, kind of everywhere. And one thing stood out is I have yet to meet a single person who has said to me, hey, the way school was when I went, the way it largely is today, that status quo model is perfect going forward. We're set. No, I mean, in different but important ways, we are all education change agents. Yet when someone shares with me their efforts to change a school, and it's been a single person trying to take this on, that's been a direct path to frustration and failure. The key, and where I see real change happening in our schools, is when it's a team of people. Maybe it starts small with something we call your own committee of 10. It might be, a dozen or so people with different perspectives that work behind the scenes to move a process forward, but where you reach a broader and broader set of people in your community and help them form a vision of what their school could be, help them weigh in on and define what important competencies you want your kids to develop, and then create the conditions that let teachers do what they entered the profession to do, which is to engage and inspire their kids and prepare them for their futures. And so when that happens, I've seen schools change in a matter of months. I've seen entire districts change top to bottom in a couple of years.
I started looking at some of the districts that are having a lot of success. It was all about the team. How do you bring people together to accomplish those goals? And crucial to that was not only the student voice, was the parent voice. Because if you try to do it yourself, you're not going to be successful. It's going to be top down. And I'd rather have it be bottom up and have everyone engaged in the process. And that almost ensures success. As long as you continue to listen and be available and be approachable and be open, it's amazing what you can accomplish when you have all these people with certain skills and abilities and talents, and you bring them in a room. It's amazing what comes out. It's not about you, it's about that groupthink, that power of the community, that power of student voice and parent voice and teacher voice. It's just amazing. You can't be stopped. You can't be stopped when you have that.
In many ways, this is the best of all times to transform our schools. And there's a saying, never let a crisis go to waste. And so can we get rid of all the negative things about this difficult period? No. There are a lot of difficult things going on. I get that, you get that, we all understand that. So we can't just snap our fingers and say that's all gone. But we can absolutely focus the education part of our community's mindset right now. The parents worried about is their kid learning, the student feeling bored and disconnected because they're at home on Zoom for 5 hours a day, the teachers feeling deluged with too much to do. We can say, okay, we could try to recreate a virtual version of normal school. Do we really want that? Did normal school ever work all that well? When we really were honest with ourselves, weren't we just looking for a reason to reimagine what our school could be? Well, we don't have to wish for that reason. It's right in front of us.
We can look at this as this horrible thing that happened to all of us in 2020, Or we can say 2020 was a pivotal year where we finally changed education to what we've been talking about for the last 40 years, but were never able to pull off because we had no choice. We were just so stuck in this system that we didn't know how to get out of it. Right now, we have an opportunity to get out of a system that has been broken for a very long time.
It can be transformational for a school community to come together around a thoughtful vehicle that promotes discussion about the future of the school, the future of the kids they care so much about. And there are a lot of ways to do that. We actually made the film Most Likely to Succeed with that express goal in mind. Convene communities in thoughtful discussion, invite people to share their own perspectives, and just draw people out in a discussion about what's important going forward for their kids. And honestly, we've done, some 10,000 school community screenings with that film, but there are a lot of great ways to do it. But in the process of getting your community energized about a new vision for your school and to be supportive about the steps you're making to achieve that vision, convening your community around something that sparks the right kind of discussion is a very important thing to do.
Way back in 2016, January of 2016, I screened Most Likely for the second time, and it was to an audience of community and members and educators. It was the entire spectrum of our community. It was 175 people, and we did an absolutely epic post-film roundtable, 25 different roundtables, 7 or 8 people around the table. And basically that activity was kicked off by asking them to take 3 or 4 minutes quietly to write down every important question that the film generated in their minds. And then the tables simply went after those questions and discussed them in as much depth as possible. And the result of that was that, as I heard afterwards, there were people who talked all the way home. An argument broke out in the women's bathroom about certain elements of what had happened in the film. Some of my former students sat out on the street in their car. They came together until 3 o'clock in the morning talking about it. All 3 are teachers now, by the way.
And I showed the film in my district too, when we were implementing some of our programs. And it really went a long way in having the parents have a different perspective and viewpoint around education. It's not just reading, writing, and arithmetic, but it's sometimes, it's communication, it's cognition, it's creativity, it's all these other things, and it's community. And that made a difference when they saw that film and they saw it in action. Now it's more real to them. It's like a concept that is just not in their minds, but they can actually see it.
So let's show the film to parents. Let's do a watch party with parents and give them a chance to talk about this, generate questions, have the conversations. Conversations set people free. It liberates them from traditional conservative thinking about what school has been, and allows them to sort of step out and think about what school could be.
The portrait of a graduate in a nutshell can be described sort of like your North Star as a school system for aiming your community towards the things that really matter for your students to know and be able to do by the time they leave your system so that they are productive citizens in a highly complex world, and that you've done everything that you can to prepare them for the success in their eventual life in the 21st century. The portrait of a graduate process is an excellent practice to embark on after you've had a chance to screen Most Likely to Succeed in many communities around the country. Pairing that process with this film is a particularly powerful way to leverage your roles as community members and guiding your students to success in the 21st century.
So we invited different agencies. We invited all the Native Hawaiian agencies. We invited politicians. We invited clergy. We invited some nonprofit organizations, anyone who worked within the community and could have an impact, and or a potential future partner in learning. And so we invited them, we watched the movie, and then we had discussions around, again, the profile of a high school graduate. And then this January, we had a follow-up session and did the same thing during the day with staff and then during at night with the community. And we presented, this is the draft of the profile of a high school graduate. We want to get some feedback We talked about the work that we had done in the meantime. Then it was kind of a call to action. How are you going to help us? So, you're saying you want all of our kids to be problem solvers. How can you as a community member, or you as our council representative, how can you help our kids get there?
What was so important about that was that the community felt like they became part of figuring out what kind of kids Molokai High School was going to graduate. And it wasn't just about college or bust or whether your kid was going to go into the trades. This was about the kinds of skills and habits and dispositions that Molokai kids would have for their entire lives. And that the very future of Molokai, which would be a balance between the pressures of the 21st century and keeping Molokai Molokai, that those kids would be the standard bearers. They would be the stewards of that idea.
What I have seen be very powerful about this process is that it is a very uplifting way to engage with your community about something aspirational. A lot of the work these days, especially right now, is very stressful and anxiety producing. And the Portrait of a Graduate is uniformly something that people say is very energizing. It makes people feel hopeful. It gives them a lot of energy for the kinds of transformation work that we know needs to happen in schools and systems around our country. So because it's aspirational, and if you do it in a community engaged way, one of the biggest benefits and one of the biggest impacts it can have for you, in addition to aligning your system around, goals that you can map to, is that it helps you build the energy and the political will for the very difficult parts of the work, which come later.
I signed up 2 months ago.
How do you walk in the shoes of a student? What are they perceiving? I work with teenagers, and as an adult, I always have to think, okay, I've gone through this many, many times. For the student, this may be the first time they're going through this experience.
Shadowing is different than a walkthrough, a look for, an observation, an instructional supervision experience. After a while, they kind of forget you're there.
I personally implemented off the playlist shadowing a student. It was very eye-opening for me as far as being really in that ground level and experiencing the student's day.
Ian Juke said we need to prepare students for their future and not our past. And when you shadow a student, and I imagine what they saw is that you're time traveling. You're traveling back in time, present time, and future time.
And my first shadowing was such an eye-opening experience for me as a school leader that all the professional development and things that we've been doing, we're not really getting into the classroom.
And then we feel there's a really powerful role for not just one. We think the more people involved with the school community who shadow students for a day, principals certainly, but maybe an innovative and a more traditional teacher, maybe a parent, maybe a student or two shadow another student, but have these different people with very different perspectives go through the school day in the shoes of a student, looking at it from the point of view of where are kids getting positive reinforcement on skill sets and mindsets we think they really need to develop. What's going on that's sort of neutral to that? And maybe what's going on that could be actually diminishing what's important.
So you're seeing the life of your school, snapshots all over. You're just seeing it, you're hearing it, you're feeling it. And you're realizing the work that you have ahead of you. You're realizing that you have some teachers that are still in the 20th century and they don't know why, how, or what it means. And then you're seeing these other teachers that know you're there, they're not performing for you, but they're certainly looking out for you and making you feel welcome and part of their journey. And they're trying to show you that they care and that they're excited about project-based learning. They're excited about inquiry. They're excited about Socratic seminar. They're trying to show you on that one day that they're willing to take risks and they're preparing their students for their future and not the teacher's past. That's the amazing thing about shadowing, is that you really get to see your school and your teachers and your students as you really can't any other way.
When it comes to changing any system, and it's certainly true for schools, think of it as a flywheel. And at the beginning, it's just sitting there and it's hard to move it, which is why we encourage you to start with a group, a committee of 10, to get it going, to use great videos to build momentum, to bring your community together, to set a big goal, to build on your bright spots. All those things are so important. Once that flywheel is moving though, take care of it, nurture it, build on that progress and momentum. I've been fortunate. I've been to Pittsburgh twice in May in the last 5 years to see their Remake Learning Days celebration. Wow, it will blow you away. So pay attention to what they're doing, how they celebrate the great progress, deliver to their community a message about what their teachers can do if they're trusted to get their kids engaged in working on different types of learning and create bold initiatives. And when that community embraces it, when they feel like they're succeeding, when they feel like they're accomplishing something important, they just view themselves differently. They view themselves as leaders, fighting for the future of their kids and actually making a difference. So powerful.
Remake Days is kind of almost a way to build a case for the new type of learning that might be different than what us as adults have experienced. And like when you talk about that type of learning, it's hard to verbalize that. But when you see it, that tells a completely different story than what you're trying to tell somebody. So to bring people in to see it, I think really helps build that case for this is the type of learning that's going to help our students in the future.
Remake Learning Days is truly a celebration of what is happening in a region. You have events really highlighting the education that's happening in rural communities, suburban communities, urban communities. By now, I think we all know it's vitally important that we reimagine learning to better prepare our kids for their futures. There's so much power if teachers, schools, districts, community centers, museums, parks, libraries, and really any place are all innovating together in their unique way to offer more compelling, more consequential learning experiences for all children.
We do this for the students. We do this for our families. I think it's really important to showcase beyond the school day.
I had a parent volunteer in the room with me during the event, and she was kind of trying to ground me, look at this. Look at what's going on in here right now. And it was really nice to take a step back for a moment and say, wow, look at all these people. Look at these kids excited to show their parents what they're doing.
A school community that comes together, embraces these goals, understands where they're headed, and says we can all do our part, man, those schools, I guarantee you by the end of the school year, you can be light years ahead of where you were before. A district, I've seen districts change top to bottom in 2 years. Once people are clear and excited, because what do we know? We know that when people have a voice in setting an ambitious goal, they will go to the ends of the earth to achieve it or exceed it. And when people are told, here's what you have to do, and they don't believe in it, good luck. And there's a lot of that, you have to, good luck, around trying to do traditional school in a way that we didn't believe in before, in a way that we always kind of rationalize because of state mandated exams or college admissions requirements or built-in expectations and patterns of behavior, or kind of this mindset, if it's not broke, don't fix it. There are a whole bunch of reasons we didn't do it. Every single one of those, it's a whole new world for them. The foundation of all of those things has changed. And so this is an enormous opportunity, and it's an enormous opportunity for leaders to step forward and say, we're going to put forward a different vision, a vision of what our school could be, a vision of what we've always known we wanted the school to be. The type of learning experiences for kids that actually prepare them for life, not just for bubble tests in college admissions.
We literally just went into crisis mode because we recognized that with the best of intentions, we were robbing children of real learning experiences that not only they need today, but that will directly translate to what they need when they graduate from us. Then we established the what. What's it going to look like, and who's on board? You know, where's the coalition? Who's going to help us lead this? Because it cannot be top down. People have to discover this on their own as they appreciate the why. So we're there. Then we start to determine the how, the what and the how, and that's where we've put together this framework and the look-fors, and voluntarily challenged teachers who are ready and willing to just experiment with it. We've wrapped our arms around them literally and figuratively and said, we're not worried about the test. Do what feels right, what brings you joy, what clearly will bring joy to your children differently than worksheets and teaching to a test. So we've built this sort of core group of our pioneers that are just modeling the work. And again, slow, strategic, hard as heck, but watching that grow, become contagious, watching a teacher across the hall say, I want to try what she's doing, or a parent coming to an exhibition night and saying, I want my kid in her class because they're building airplanes. You know what I mean? They're doing worksheets.
You know, it was interesting because, you know, I think when you start an initiative like that, you have a bunch of staff that want to lead, that jump right on board. And I think because they had such success and because our kids were having such success, you know, by the end, you know, I felt like I pulled in the beginning a few along. At the end, I think I was just fueling the fire.
The mantra is makahana ka'ike. The mantra is by doing one learns. In education, so many times educators and administrators feel like it has to be perfect before it engages with the world. If we're telling our students they need to feel safe to fail, we have to live that mantra as well. And iteration and that concept of minimum viable product, you know, a small version of something larger that allows you to test if you're on the right track, right? There's 1,000 different names for it. Like, you have to do that in schools. And so for me, it's the capstone program. Hopefully that grows. Hopefully that influences an institution. Hopefully that influences a region, right? And all of us are trying to do that. Figure out what the small version is that's going to give you actionable feedback back, and just do it. Don't wait. Do not wait. Tomorrow, design something tiny and allow it to grow. Because when people see an empowered base of students, it's really hard to keep denying them the schema and the structure to be able to keep doing it.
The virus itself, in a weird kind of way, wants to limit us. It wants to shut us down. And this is precisely the moment where you push back against that and say, is this the moment to dip my toes into project-based learning? Absolutely. Is this the moment to shadow students? Absolutely. Is this when we should be looking at the profiles of our graduates, either middle school or high school? Absolutely. Let's take a real close look at who our kids are going to be and what skills and habits and dispositions they have when we come out of it. And I think the idea here is that you can actually build community through these activities, and it's the building of the community that's going to get us through this thing. But this is an epic moment for us to really push this issue of how do we form into a community, how does a school or a complex or a district see itself as it takes a village, that we're all going to work on this together. And with parents at home fulfilling the role of, you know, learning coach more than ever before, what a great moment to enroll them.
I had a high school teacher who had been very resistant in my last work throughout the whole process. Was a very traditional teacher and a good teacher using traditional methods and surface level teaching to the test. It took him longer to get it. When he got it, he came back to me and he said, I owe you an apology. And I said, no, you don't. Everybody's journey is you know, personal. But he said, no, I owe you an apology. If I had just understood that you were simply asking me to teach the way I taught before SOLs, the way I loved, where I found joy, where my kids found joy, where learning could be much more organic and real, meaningful, purposeful. That is what's sad, because he was right. We're not making widgets, we're helping kids and preparing the next generation of citizens. So the only other thing I'd like to say about it is we cannot underestimate the value of this work for the people who are closest to the work. Yes, our kids are going to benefit, but through this work, we are going to ignite people who have suffered, literally suffered through a movement that has good intentions and holds us accountable, maybe to the wrong things, but does hold us accountable to the work at the expense of the joy and the enthusiasm that the best teachers have and then instill in their students.